Good morning, students. As in the previous session, we started with our poem, I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud. Now today, we will continue with the explanation of the poem. Now let's discuss the word meanings and phrases of the second stanza. Milky Way, cluster of stars in a galaxy, stretched, extended, margin, edge or border, bay, lake or water body, glance, quick look, tossing, movement of head, sprightly, full of energy. Coming on phrases, as the stars, सितारों के रूप में, in a never ending line, कभी ना खत्म होने वाली कतार में. Now let's start with the reading of the second stanza. Continuous as the stars that shine and twinkle on the Milky Way. They stretched in a never-ending line along the margin of a bay. 10,000 saw I at a glance, tossing their heads in sprightly dance. Here Milky Way is the cluster of stars in a galaxy. Stretched, extended, margin, edge or border. Bay is lake or water body. Glance, a quick look. Tossing, movement of head. Sprightly, full of energy. As the stars, सितारों के रूप में, in a never-ending line, कभी ना खत्म होने वाली कतार में. Now, as I told you, the poet has used a figure of speech simile here. So now here, as the stars that shine and twinkle on the Milky Way is a simile, because here the poet has compared large number of daffodils to the numerous stars in the Milky Way, and as this comparison is made using as, so it is a simile. Now in these lines the poet says that the daffodils were as many as the stars in the Milky Way. He also says that he could see 10,000 daffodils growing beside the lake. They were moving their heads in a happy dance. Now let's start with the explanation of stanza 2. Open your copies and put the heading stanza number 2. Now write down hint. Hint, as I had already told you, is the first two and the last two words of the stanza. So the hint for this stanza will be continuous as dash sprightly dance. Now coming to the reference to the context. Reference to the context, I had already discussed it with you in the previous session, so we will recapitulate it. These lines have been taken from the poem I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud, written by William Wordsworth. This poem is about an incident when the poet saw a huge number of daffodils in a valley. So this will be our reference to the context. Now coming on explanation. Now what the poet wants to say in these lines? In these lines, the poet says that the daffodils were as many as the stars in the Milky Way. He also says that he could see 10,000 daffodils growing beside the lake. They were moving their heads in a happy dance. This is the explanation of stanza number 2. Now let's discuss the word meanings of stanza 3. Outdid, surpassing. Glee, feeling of happiness. Gay, happy. Jocund, cheerful. Gazed, looked continuously. Coming on phrases, in such a jocund company, ऐसी खुशहाल संगत में. Now let's start with the reading of the third stanza. The waves beside them danced, but they outdid the sparkling waves in glee. A poet could not but be gay in such a jocund company. I gazed and gazed, but little thought what wealth the show to me had brought. Here, outdid means surpassing. Glee is feeling of happiness. Gay is happy. Jocund, cheerful. Gazed, looked continuously. Here, in such a jocund company means ऐसी खुशहाल संगत में. Now in these lines, the poet says that waves of the lake were also dancing happily, but the dance of the daffodils was better than them. The poet could not help being happy when he was in such a joyful company. He kept on looking at them for a long time. Now let's start with the explanation of the third stanza. So put a heading, stanza number 3, and write down the hint. So hint for the third stanza will be the waves dash had brought. Now reference to the context. Reference to the context I had already discussed for 2 stanzas. It will be the same. So coming on the explanation. Now what the poet wants to convey in this stanza. In these lines, the poet says that the waves of the lake were also dancing happily, but the dance of daffodils was better than theirs. The poet could not help being happy when he was in such a joyful company. He kept on looking at them for a long time. This will be the explanation of our stanza number 3. Now let's discuss the word meanings related to stanza number 4. Of, often, vacant, not occupied, pensive, sad, inward eye, deep and true vision, bliss, perfect happiness, solitude, loneliness. Coming on phrases, on my couch, मेरे सोफे पर, with the daffodils, daffodils के साथ. Now let's start with the reading of stanza number 4. For oft when on my couch I lie, in vacant or in pensive mood, they flash upon that inward eye, which is the bliss of solitude. And then my heart with pleasure fills and dances with the daffodils. Here oft means often. Vacant means not occupied. Pensive, sad. Inward eye, deep and true vision. Bliss is perfect happiness. Solitude is loneliness. On my couch, मेरे सोफे पर, with the daffodils, daffodils के साथ. Now, in these lines, the poet says that whenever he lies on his couch, on his sofa, in a gloomy, in a sad mood, the beautiful daffodils come to his mind and his heart begins to dance with them. The beautiful daffodils give him the happiness in his loneliness. Now let's start with the explanation of stanza number 4. Put the heading stanza 4 and write down a hint. Hint is for oft dash the daffodils. Now coming on reference to the context. Reference to the context will be the same as we did in first 3 stanzas. Now come on the explanation. Now what the poet wants to convey in these lines. In these lines, the poet says that whenever he lies on his sofa in a gloomy mood, the beautiful daffodils come to his mind, giving him happiness in his loneliness, and his heart begins to dance with them. This is our explanation of stanza number 4. I hope you understood the explanation of the poem. Now, try to plan the central idea and the back exercises of the poem. I recommend you to read the poem again and again for better understanding. Thank you.